Good morning, everyone, and welcome. The regular Wednesday, November 6, 2024 meeting of the Nags Head Board of Commissioners is hereby called to order. If you will, please join me in a few moments of silence. And now, as you're able, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item is the adoption of the agenda, and we're going to have a small change.
Yeah. Mayor, I'd like to change the presentation for Nags Head Woods annual report to go in front of the Earl Murray Jr. Employee of the Year presentation.
All right, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you. And now a motion to adopt the agenda as amended would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. That brings us to the presentation of the Nags Head Woods annual report, and we'll ask Aaron to come up, please.
Thank you all. All right. Just the clicker. All right. Thank you all. It's nice to see you all this morning. I appreciate you giving me your time this morning to speak a little bit about Nags Head Woods and our annual report. A lot of this is information that you probably received in the PDF file for annual report that's out there now. If you have any questions at any one of these slides, please feel free to just jump right in, okay? Let's see. That's a pointer. How's this thing going? I saw the laser come on. Is this the right thing, or is this the mouse?
Just use the mouse.
Okay, let's do that. Maybe.
You got it. I can see it moving in here.
Presentations.
I can
Right.
click.
All right.
It's fine.
Use the left button.
All right, thank you. As you know, Nags Head Woods, about 90% of our annual operations, private fund raised by TNC in North Carolina. Also, the town of Nags Head and Killable Hills contribute to that, so we appreciate that. And all that funding goes to projects to significantly improve Nags Head Woods, both ecologically and for the community and for visitors. I'm just gonna have to, maybe I'm not getting any response. That's, oh, okay, so I think I'll roll it. There we go. All right, figured it out. Thank you. All right, so just to kind of go over our trails infrastructure, we have about 8 miles of hiking trails, ADA trail. Within our trails, we have 4 wooden bridges, boardwalk, 7 benches, 1,000 linear feet of boardwalk ADA, 62 signs, and we also have an audio tour in English and Spanish. And we also have multiple buildings on the site that we have to manage for. Oops, sorry, that thing's going to roll quickly. It's touchy. Sorry. So visitation this past year, we're seeing around 700 to 1,000 hikers a month. Anywhere between 20 to 40 each day on the trails. On our vehicle counter, these are all laser counters that we have out there now. We're seeing just under 3,000 vehicles a month using that gravel road. On our audio tour, we're seeing around 2,000 within the calls that go on our audio tour, and that's the audio tour that runs on the Roanoke Trail that leads down to the Sound. We also recently put a locator just there at the county of the visitor center, and if you saw in some of the other data graphs that we sent in the crowd, that counter is seeing quite a bit of higher numbers. So we're having a lot of people visiting Nags Head Woods that maybe aren't hiking the trails, but just showing up as first-time users, finding out what's back there during the summer months and stuff like that. And you see just between October and June, we had just under 30K that just walked past up towards our office to the visiting center area. These are just some of the people that have been working with us. We've had a bunch of summer and fall interns. We hosted 2 interns from CSI. That's an ongoing thing that we do. We have 2 currently working with us right now, and that's with the fall semester thing, the Outer Banks field site. We hosted 2 summer interns that we worked with the Conservation Corps of NC. So they spent all summer out there working with visitors and working on particular projects. We also last year hosted a First Flight senior that worked with us through the year and stuff like that. So that was nice. She was really helpful in doing stuff around the woods, and it was nice to be able to interact with a student from the schools and stuff like that. And as you've heard, many years we have volunteer and service projects. Last year we had Appalachia State that helped us. They've been working with us for over 10 years. And we also have a couple of volunteers. In particular, we've had one volunteer that's been really key in getting out on the trails, helping with construction work and stuff like that. And so last year, we had just under 1,000 hours of volunteer service hours out there. As far as education goes, we try to work with our partners with the aquarium. We had the Sea to Sound field trip that happened there. That basically occurs on the town property by the Bonnet Street area, goes across the Y, goes through y'all's park and stuff, and they basically work with all the 5th grade classes for Nags Head and Kill Devil Hills, and those kids get a chance to go. And so we use some of our endowment funding to help support those and to pay for those field trips to happen. And they get to experience basically what it looks like going from the ocean side all the way through the maritime forest to the sound and stuff, the ecological thing of what a barrier island looks like and through a maritime forest. We also worked with the summer camps, both with Coastal Studies Institute, with Dare County Parks and Rec, and with the North Carolina Aquarium. And you can see in this picture, we did interpretive days where we have the other buildings set up. So there was some kind of like hands-on, touch and feel type things. We have one of our summertime help people out there actually explaining some of the information and being on hand to really try to have some more experience. Not everything's a paper copy, not everything's a sign where someone can actually ask questions and get real information and stuff like that. So we reached 292 individuals this past 2004. As always, we're also doing management of the property, and invasive species is one of our biggest concerns that alters our habitat areas. We're always removing non-native plants like Russian olive, Oriental bittersweet, Japanese stiltgrass. These things come in both from roadside debris, they come in from seeds from other animals and things like that. And we also worked this past year, we saw an increase in nutria activity out there, and they are detrimental to our freshwater marsh system. The brackish, they eat a lot of roots, they eat a lot of those things, and they can break down the system. They also burrow into the side of the banks, so you can have collapse and things like that. And we worked with a local trapper who's certified in trapping these things, and we were able to get 11 individuals out this past winter, which is something we kind of need to work on in order for us to maintain some of those freshwater integrity habitats, those marshy areas. And as always, we have a deer management program that's a bow hunting thing. Last year we had 37 participants, and we harvested 9 deer during the season. That's what they reported as far as getting that. Not all 37 hunters actually participate in the season, but we had 37 registered hunters. So, out of that, we may get 20 that are actually putting in a significant amount of hours to hunt that wood. But it is a program that we offer, and this year we have 45 registered hunters. So, and I know that we've harvested at least 3 deer so far. Nope, sorry, touchy. If you've been back in the woods most recently, we've actually kind of tried to bring together and incorporate new signage that reflects where trails are. Nags Head Woods, a lot of our signs were going back to the late 80s, early 90s, and we tried to just add some new flair, bring some stuff. These are all with more recycled plastic. They're a lot easier for us to clean and do things like that. And we tried to have something that matched across the thing, so once you enter the woods, you know where you are, and new trailheads. We do have some more signs coming up that will reflect similar type of design. And that's, so one of the places we're actually going to do it will be within the town trail and the YMCA trail. We have intent to put new signage in those areas as well, as some of those things have been there a while. And we want to reflect some of that type of look. And we're also fundraising to do some pavilion refresher in our education exhibit. We want to make that area, that other building, be able to open it up to the public, have some things, more interpretive type of things, so the public can get a better idea of maybe who the Nature Conservancy is, more about Nags Head Woods. We'd like to look at a 3D model of Nags Head Woods, so we could pull it out and people could actually overlook the woods and you could see the topography that runs through the woods, which is what makes Nags Head Woods really important. I think one of the really cool characteristics about the woods. So this is what we're working on, trying in the next year to fundraise and bring some money in so that we can do some more exhibits along that area and make it more refreshed and be allowed for visitors and local people to come in and learn more about the woods. I want that thing's moved too fast, so quickly. Sorry, touchy. And I also really want to just quick, I know this is going to be discussion coming up later today, but I want to thank the town for even looking into this, looking into the easement of those 248 acres there. I think this is a really an amazing thing that you guys are working towards and trying to look at, looking at long-term conservation out here and things like that. And this parcel, not only one of the biggest parcels that connects some of the other land already in conservation by the town in TNC, but it also includes our longest trail system and things like that. So I think that makes it really important. That allows for this place to continually have 4 miles of trail open to the public for perpetuity. And I also want to give a big thanks out to Amy Miller. She worked really hard and diligent about going through all this stuff with the Land and Water Fund and helping to keep things on track. And so we wouldn't be here discussing this later today if it wasn't for Amy Miller and all the hard work she did. So I appreciate her. Thank you. I appreciate, as always, your support. Happy to answer any questions, and I'm happy to always have you guys out to visit anything you guys have questions about out in the woods.
Okay. All right. Board members, any questions or comments?
No, thank you
thanks
for your hard work.
No, thank you.
I don't have any questions, but looks like the programs are working out and the volunteers really well. I think it looks the best I've ever seen it look back there, so
Cool.
appreciate
Yeah,
it.
we're trying to keep up on it.
Yeah, it
We
looks
have a lot
really
more
nice.
activity with people-wise, so you've really kind of got to stay on top of things. And we're getting good support from locals as well, who just call and say, hey, there's a tree down and things like that. And, as you know, you can only be but so many places. So having local support, even if it's just, hey, there's a problem, or hey, there's this, or even, hey, looks really nice, is really nice to hear.
Yeah, it does.
So I appreciate it.
Great. Thank you, Aaron. Really
All right,
appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
All
Thank
right,
you all for
bye-bye.
the time.
So now we will circle back to recognitions, and we will start that with the introduction of a new police officer.
Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. It's my pleasure to introduce our newest employee, Officer Kyle Kuhar. Kyle began his law enforcement career working in New Jersey for the Galloway Township Police Department, where he spent 8 years of service. He made his move to our area in 2021 when he was hired by the Duck Police Department, spent over 3 years there before just recently joining our staff here in Nags Head. Kyle possesses an associate's degree in criminal justice from Atlantic Cape Community College. He lives in Camden, where he resides with his wife, Kristen, and their 5-month-old daughter, Wiley.
Very
Kyle,
nice.
welcome, Nags Head.
Thank you very much, and y'all be safe out there today. Next, we will have a recognition for 5 years of service. Nancy?
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. I would like to acknowledge Sue Cummins for her 5 years of service with Public Services. Sue is the first person you meet when you enter the Public Works building. She greets people with a smile and a willingness to help. If she does not know the answer to a question, she is quick to find out and get back to the people. Sue is responsible for the day-to-day operations of the front office. Along with assisting customers over the phone and walk-ins, she issues work orders to ensure trash carts are repaired and replaced in a timely manner, assists water billing by monitoring the readings on the hydrant meter used by contractors, enters daily information for our monthly reports, as well as responding to questions and requests received over the town's website. Early on, she made it her mission to learn all there is to know about public works, especially sanitation. From town recycling to seasonal cart rollback service and the brush yard operations, Sue is a go-to person. In 2023, it was Public Services' turn to host the annual Christmas party. Sue was the reason that it was such a success, from finding the venue, selecting the menu and the horseshoe ornaments, creating table decorations and decorating. Her attention to detail makes eating a hot dog with no bun a festive occasion. Comments by her co-workers are, she is a welcoming presence when entering Public Works Administration Building. She is a logistics expert that keeps things rolling. She's always willing to help others, and we appreciate her hard work and all she does for us. Thank you, Sue.
And that was a good part. That brings us now to an employee with 20 years of service. Amy?
Good morning. Yes, today we are celebrating Vicki Wright, who is our accounts payable specialist. She's been with the town for 20 years. When I think about Vicki, the town value that immediately comes to mind is excellence requires innovation and technology. She has always been a champion for change, and anytime we have anything new that needs tested, she is like always the first one to try it out. People in our department even ask Vicki for help in solving their own technology issues, even though Vicki has never used it or hasn't been trained how to use it. She's dangerous enough to know that she can leverage what she does know to troubleshoot and solve problems in any munis or anything else, anything technology related. She has also created a training program for our staff in which she held munis training sessions. She created the content, she delivered it. It was large enough that we held it in here. She held targeted training in our conference room. And of course, she's always available and everybody's go-to for a one-on-one training, whether it be a phone call or running to public services, which segues into another town value. Vicki personifies, and this is attitude is key. I think everyone in the town knows Vicki, and I really do think she is the glue that binds other departments together, and she really does help build a sense of team and community, which is very much appreciated. If you have enjoyed the town's new fitness facility, you can thank Vicki, because she was actually responsible for moving the equipment, getting it set up, coordinating all of that, just ensuring that we have the proper functioning equipment that would most be used, and making sure it's a comfortable and safe place for us to use. She's in charge of writing our grants that we have from the League of Municipalities for the lunches and the gatherings that we have. And she's also a member of the team member advocacy group, and coordinates internal town gatherings. And of course, she's most recently in charge of the Move More initiative and the town's wiffle ball tournament. And these just really highlight a few things that Vicki coordinates that show that our people matter. This is important enough to her and meaningful enough to her that she makes the time to take care of all this while she still ensures that her job is getting done, of course. This includes, meeting deadlines, making sure we are complying with reporting, the audit, and of course she's the P-card queen. And one of the things she recently did was, we don't have gas pumps that are functioning anymore because of the public services, so she's making sure everybody has gas cards in their car. We can keep going, never skips a beat. These are just small details that people perhaps take for granted, but I just really think it's important to, highlight some of these things that are the backbone of our operations. She's reliable, dedicated, and she just is good at her job, and we're lucky to have her. And by she cares for our team members the way she does. That just supports our town and makes it a better place to work for everybody. So, thank you for coming.
And as is our custom for employees with 24 years of service, I'm going to ask Vicki to please stay up front and ask the board to come around. Thank you again, Vicki, for 20 years of service. We really appreciate it. Give us 20 more.
She can't leave until I do.
That brings us to probably the most important thing we'll do today, frankly, and that is the Earl Murray Jr. Employee of the Year. And these nominees will be presented by the department heads. After that presentation, the board will recess to a closed session, and we will then present the Employee of the Year. So are we starting with you, Amy?
That's what's on
Yes.
Yep.
All right, well, the first one that we have here is Faye Sims, and Faye was nominated by our department, and she is our payroll specialist. And I really do appreciate the nomination, and I really think it honors what I would call like the invisible work that gets put in day to day to support our team members. I mean, people just magically get paid, right? And they don't understand what goes into that to get to that point, and what a process it is, and how smoothly it runs. And then it's not only that, it's what happens after that we have to do. So it is definitely a lot of, it's the journey that gets to the destination, right? So she is responsible for managing our payroll process, and obviously it includes payroll filing, taxes on time, and she is responsible for doing reconciliation of our benefits and wages, and this includes obviously the W-2s and the 1095s we get done at the end of the year. It requires a complete commitment to confidentiality and compliance and staying up to date to the payroll laws and regulations. So one of the things that I wrote about Faye was how she went above and beyond her work, is her commitment that she did to work at our front desk, and you know, that's the commitment that the team is the town's greatest asset. So one of our career progressions is cross-training. So this year she committed to contributing to the greater success of the team by becoming proficient at working in the front desk. And of course, this is on top of doing her regular work. And this just really provides relief to our staff. And it fills in any gaps when somebody's not there at the front, because somebody does have to be there all the time and answer the phone all the time. And again, that's something that gets taken granted, but there's a lot of coordination that goes into that. So she really does assist customers both internally and externally, right, to provide the best level of customer service that we have. And of course, this is all in conjunction with her steady workload that is all dictated by deadlines that she always meets, and we appreciate that she was able to prioritize that, so thank you. And of course, you know, since I've been here, Faye has been our third payroll specialist, and so that really, people perhaps came, you know, when she came in a little bit skeptical, just because there's been a lot of change, and it can make some people uneasy. But she brought over 30 years experience when she came here to the payroll, and it was a completely smooth transaction. Our employees have complete confidence in their payroll, and that's a huge thing. And it gets processed correctly, and it allows them to like focus on their jobs and not worry about micromanaging their paychecks. And of course, she's always available for questions. And as far as tying it to town values, that's easy. One of them is, of course, our people matter. She knows how important her job is. She upholds the trust and integrity inherent to that position. You know, payroll, again, seems like very straightforward. It's not that simple. We have up to 170 employees that she processes, and there's all different schedules, there's different pay dates. She goes through everybody's timesheet to make sure it's correct. and her work is just meticulous, and she's completely organized, diligent. Her breadth of knowledge and experience provide confidence to our team members. She takes her job extremely seriously and operates with a sense of urgency. And her attitude is incredible, even when things get hectic. Again, year end, fiscal year end, she maintains composure and calmness under pressure, and she treats everybody like she would want to be treated. She has a strong work ethic and a positive approach. Her work is infectious in curating an environment where everyone feels committed to their roles and responsibilities. This creates a cohesive and supportive culture. And finally, we do what's right for the right reasons. She takes the initiative to solve problems as they arise, and she, can anticipate any problems and usually solve them before they even have a chance to become a problem. She's a critical and analytical thinker, and she is a member of the American Payroll Association that provides another level of education and skills that she brings to provide the best possible service to our employees. So in closing, I would like to recognize Faye as the Admin Services and Town Manager's Employee of the Year because of her attention to detail, diligence, initiative, accuracy, and timeliness of her work. Her consistently reliable work and dedication to our team does not go unnoticed, deserves to be recognized and celebrated. She personifies top-tier internal customer service for our team members and realize they deserve her greatest effort and attention. So thank you for considering Faye as the Employee of the Year.
Faye.
That won't affect your chances. Thank you. Yeah, that's good. Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. This morning, I am here to present the Planning Department's Employee of the Year, Chris Tremblay, for consideration for the Earl Murray Jr. Employee of the Year Award. Chris joined the Planning Department in May of 2022 as our Code Enforcement Officer, and he transitioned to Planner in December. So that was a very quick transition for him. Chris exemplifies the town's core values in his day-to-day operations within the town, and I would just like to mention a few of those for you today. Soon after joining the Planning Department, Chris spearheaded a reflective sign initiative. He presented that proposal to the board at the time, and it had a lot of support. The initiative focused on repurposing street signs to place addresses intermittently on the east-facing side of homes on the beach to enhance location and awareness on the beach side. This benefits both residents and visitors, and this project reflects our values as community stewards and how excellence does require innovation. Coming into his role as planner, Chris transformed the department's residential stormwater permitting flows, consolidating records into SharePoint for easy access and continuity among all staff. This supports teamwork and efficiency, highlighting the value that our people matter. Also in his role as planner, Chris realigned the department's NCDEQ erosion and sedimentation control local program to state standards, reinforcing our role as community stewards and ensuring that our practices remain compliant, efficient, and effective. Chris has a strong commitment to professional development. He quickly and eagerly enrolled in training with the North Carolina School of Government and earned his certified zoning official designation, reflecting commitment to excellence and keeping our town in the know. Through his active membership in the North Carolina Association of Certified Zoning Officials, he stays on top of any new legislation, proposed legislation, etc. Chris pursued multiple certifications in stormwater control measure inspection maintenance and also rain garden certification, further enhancing our team's capabilities. His dedication to excellence has strengthened the town's role in environmental stewardship and stormwater management. While Chris's primary duties fall within the day-to-day permit issuance, where he has been instrumental in reducing permit turnaround times, he also takes an active role in larger permitting initiatives. Chris has been proactively researching trends in accessory dwelling units, helping the department stay on top of emerging housing options, and he's led the exploration of non-regulatory approaches to residential lighting concerns, including dark sky initiatives, and developing a sky quality monitoring program to assess light pollution, which is aligning with their 2024 strategic plan and reinforcing their commitment to community stewardship. Chris is committed to customer service excellence. He's known for his responsiveness and positive interactions with property owners, contractors, and team members. This is just a sample of why Chris is the Planning Department's Employee of the Year. We want to extend our sincere appreciation to Chris. He demonstrates the town's values through his positive attitude, dedication to high standards, and pride in his work. For these reasons and many more, we're thrilled to nominate Chris for the town's Nags Head Earl Murray Jr. Employee of the Year Award. So thank you for everything.
Good job, Chris.
Thank you. Hello, Nancy.
Hey.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Good morning. Our nominee didn't know anything until about 10 minutes ago. So. Public Services would like to nominate Town Engineer David Ryan for the Employee of the Year Award. David's responsibilities are varied and demanding, to say the least. His tasks include, but not limited to, preparing grant proposals, managing stormwater planning, and overseeing our shoreline management program. In addition to these tasks, David is also responsible for preparing and sending out RFQs, contracts, and bid requests for various town projects he manages. In 2024, David was responsible for the drainage improvements in Old Nags Head Place, replacing the Loggerhead Beach access, overseeing the improvements of the Epstein Street Beach access, which included the construction of a new bathhouse and ocean rescue station. In addition to the above, he designed the replacement of the gazebo and pier at the estuary access on the causeway, designed water lines on Gallery Road and the causeway, oversaw the installation of new sidewalks on both sides of North Sea Chase, and developed the traffic calming policy and the right-of-way encroachment agreement for the town of Nags Head. Despite his busy schedule, David always finds time to assist other departments and answer questions as needed, truly embodying the many hats that he wears in the town. He is far from a typical 9-to-5 employee. I have personally witnessed him working after hours, pulling briars from the live oaks at Public Services, or checking culvert pipes and stormwater drainage in subdivisions on weekends. One particular hot Saturday this summer, I saw him installing erosion control grass matting in a stormwater ditch. When asked if he needed help, he said, "Nope, I got it, won't take me long." David is I've barely scratched the surface of what David has accomplished in 2024. Now let me tell you what he does when he's resting. David is the project manager for the new Public Services Complex. From groundbreaking in April 2023 until present, David has been the driving force behind its success. Over the year, he has made multiple daily trips from his office to Public Services site to check on progress, ensuring every detail was addressed. His professionalism and consistent communication with contractors kept the project moving forward. As the divisions of Public Services zigged and zagged getting the work done, it was David who helped us navigate the phases of construction, and our transition into our new facilities. On days when the winds of change were blowing through 2200 Lark Avenue, David remained a calm, stabilizing presence. If there was a Hall of Fame for putting out fires, David would surely be inducted. His coworkers have this to say about David. From cut cable wires to truck deliveries to helping others understand plans, being in contact with contractors, and kept all things moving forward. There is a lot more he has done that is not listed here, and this is why David Bryant is my nominee for Employee of the Year. The work he has done in our project and facilities have been above and beyond. He's always answered calls and requests in a very timely manner. He's put in a tremendous number of hours to make it all happen. His attitude and work ethic has been outstanding. I would like to nominate David Ryan and thank him for everything he's done for Public Works. And my personal favorite, I choose David Ryan. Thanks. I hope you do too.
Congratulations, Steve. That was
Nancy's little Freudian slip was appropriate. She said years. It sounds like years worth of work, but it's one. Thank you. Good morning again.
Good morning again. I'm pleased to announce the Police Department's 2024 Employee of the Year nominee is Police Officer Tyson Wild. Officer Wild has a wealth of law enforcement experience, which began with his almost 20 years of service for the Suffolk, Virginia Police Department. In December of 2021, he began working for us here in Nags Head and has been a valuable member of the patrol division ever since that time. Tyson's what we refer to as a cop's cop. He completes his work without issue. He's a valuable resource for younger officers that are new to the job. He's always professional in appearance and is a great example of what a police officer should be. Officer Wild is probably most known for his ability to find things, such as lost or stolen property, missing people, and in particular, those not wanting to be found. Some of the comments submitted by his peers who nominated Tyson for this award include, he does all of his work without issue and is always eager to assist with anything he can. Every time I work with him, he interacts with the community and the townspeople and represents the department extremely well. He goes above and beyond investigating crimes at just the patrol level. His wealth of experience and professional demeanor on calls is what the other officers here at Nags Head PD should strive to achieve. I'm not making this up, by the way. And of course, Tyson can find anything. It's for these reasons that Police Officer Tyson Wild has been selected as the Nags Head Police Department's 2024 Employee of the Year, and is our recommendation for the 2024 Earl Murray Jr. Employee of the Year for the town Nags Head. Tyson, congrats.
Morning, Chief.
Good morning. Good morning, Mayor and esteemed members of the Board of Commissioners. On behalf of Nags Head Fire Department, I'm deeply honored to present Engineer James Phillips as our nominee for the prestigious Earl Murray Jr. Town of Nags Head Employee of the Year Award. James is an outstanding member of our department who embodies our core values of courage, compassion, and commitment in everything he does. His dedicated work ethic and willingness to go above and beyond have made a positive and lasting impact in not only our department, but within our community. James approaches every challenge with a solutions-based, oriented mindset. He is proactive and consistently taking on additional responsibilities such as maintaining our fire vehicles and station facilities. On several occasions, James has used his mechanical skills to repair critical fire apparatus, helping us to reduce cost and minimize downtime that would otherwise impact our operations. James lives by principles of doing the right thing even when no one is watching. He is accountable for his actions and holds others to that same high standard. Dependable and trustworthy, he completes every task he's assigned and eagerly takes on new challenges. For example, he's led the adoption of battery-operated tools to enhance our efficiency during emergency responses. He researched these options, obtained quotes, managed the entire process, and ultimately secured over $2,000 worth of tools to be donated to our department. James takes great pride in maintaining our department's assets and understanding that our trust is in our community's best interest. A recent example of this is when he replaced a damaged mop sink at Station 16. While that doesn't seem like a big thing, a damaged sink causes damage. James not only completed the replacement, he also took the time to clean, repaint, and sand the surrounding areas, exemplifying his attention to detail. James is committed to continuous learning, recognizing that it's essential for serving our community effectively. Over the past year, he's taken advanced training, including a 6-day course at the National Fire Academy, a 2-day course on vehicle extrication tactics, and a 3-day advanced firefighting tactics course. Additionally, James has become the first fire engineer in our department to complete the acting officer training program, qualifying him to serve as a company officer when a captain or lieutenant is unavailable. His dedication and professional growth ensures he is always prepared to lead and provide top-notch service for our community. James plays a vital role in regional training collaborations. As a member of the Dare County Fire Officers Association, he assists in providing training that enhances the skills and readiness of firefighters throughout our county. His support during advanced fire training sessions enable firefighters across the region to improve their abilities and better serve their communities. Above all, James demonstrates exceptional compassion and commitment to our community. In emergency situations, he works tirelessly to mitigate issues and respond to the needs of those affected. He consistently shows empathy and understanding. He never hesitates to take on a challenge or step up when he's needed. He's always eager to learn a new skill that will better serve both the community and our department. In everything he does, James exemplifies the core values of our department: courage, compassion, and commitment. Whether he's leading a project, maintaining equipment, or assisting in emergency scenes, James's contributions have made a remarkable impact on our department and our town. For these reasons, I'm proud to nominate Engineer James Phillips for the Earl Murray Jr. Town of Nags Head Employee of the Year. Thank you for this consideration.
Thank you, James.
Oh, shaking hands, sorry. We're going to take a picture in a minute, but before we recess to our closed session to consider the Employee of the Year, you know, when people ask me what it's like to serve up here, I always tell them it's easy, and I tell them it's easy in Nags Head because we have a great staff. We have the best set of employees anybody could imagine in a town of this size. It's absolutely true. Y'all make this job easy, except today. And this is always the hardest thing that this board has to do, because we always have fabulous, exemplary employees, and we're forced to make a choice where we wish that we could recognize all of them. And I'm glad we've made the change that they are Departmental Employees of the Year. I think that's important because you heard from the folks who expressed their nominations here at the podium this morning, how their fellow employees feel about them and what this recognition means in those departments. And so we really appreciate y'all. Roberta, we're going to ask everybody to come up. We're going to ask I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and recess, and then we'll do the picture. So The board will be in recess. I'm sorry?
Are you going to take a motion to go into closed session?
We are going to take a motion to go to closed session.
And then
Thank you.
recess? Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
A
Okay.
motion to go into closed session, Mayor.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to go into closed session. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? All right, thank you. So after a picture, the board will be in recess. Thank you. The board has returned to open session. Other than the announcement, Mr. Leidy, do you have anything to report from the closed session?
Only that the board did take action to unseal a series of old closed session minutes, but other than that, nothing else needs to be reported.
All right, thank you. I told you before we went into recess that this is always an incredibly difficult decision. And it was. And, but what happens is that we have to choose somebody. And there's always, not always, but often there's one little reason. There's something extraordinary among all of the extraordinary. And there were a couple of stories shared about this employee, and I'll share one of them. I have been changed my routine lately, and I've been walking my neighborhood in the mornings, early mornings, and so I met a new neighbor, someone from the adjacent neighborhood who walks our neighborhood, and so we chatted, introduced ourselves, and then we ran into each other another morning, and they knew I was the mayor, and they started talking about this employee. And they said, I was out doing something, and I saw this employee dressed for the office, but they had a tool, and they were doing something in the right-of-way. And I said to them, well, that's not the first time somebody's seen this person doing that. And, I told that citizen, I said, that's about all you can ask of an employee, is that they be willing to go that far in their job to do not only what they have to do at their desk, but also to sort of step out of that role and go out and take care of some task that needs to be taken care of. And there were other stories of folks who've had encounters with this employee, upset about something or another that had happened to them or to their home, and had talked to this employee, and then they were not angry with the town anymore and kind of understood the context. And I think you heard a little bit of that power of explanation in their nomination. And so if you haven't guessed yet, this year's Employee of the Year is David Ryan.
Congratulations, Dave. It's well deserved.
David, we're going to ask you to stay for a picture. And before he leaves the room, is there anybody else who would share any observations about David?
The one thing I can say about David is if I call David and I say, hey, this person's got a problem, they call me back and say, he called me and everything's fine. No problem with that. So it's always good to know you can call somebody and get, another side of the story or what's really going on and explain to the citizen that way. So that's
Yeah.
great.
I've got a lot of examples of,
Yeah.
but I don't know, from my perspective, I appreciate all the nominations. They're all very well done. I mean, the department heads really just go above and beyond and citing examples and tying it back to our values, and so they really do a great job. And, I just, with this past year and a half and doing this public services project and being probably one of the most significant vertical construction projects in the town's history, and David having managed that, it was really, really his year. And so I appreciate the board's consideration and appreciate David.
Yep, indeed. Thank you, sir. All right. That brings us to to public comment. Excuse me. I'll turn this over to Mr. Leidy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, the Board of Commissioners welcomes members of the public to come and provide public comment. This is an opportunity for people to say what may be of interest to them and might be of interest to the public. It's not an opportunity for dialogue, and the board rarely responds to public comment. We do have 2 public hearings on the agenda for today, and so if anyone wants to comment on those public hearings, you should reserve your comments until we call those public hearings. But for anyone else who wishes to provide comment on other matters, this is your opportunity. If you'll please come to the podium, start by telling us your name and where you live, and then address your comments to the board as a whole, and I'll let you know when your 5 minutes is just about up. So, anybody? It appears there is no one here for public comment, so we will close the public comment session.
Very good. Thank you. That brings us to the consent agenda, which you have before you, and a motion would be in order.
Make that motion, Mayor.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Great. Thank you. That brings us to public hearings, and I will turn it back to Mr. Leidy.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, we're going to begin the public hearing to consider a special use / site plan review for the construction of a 2-story, 8-bedroom dormitory. On this matter, the board sits as a quasi-judicial body, and that means that there are certain requirements for this type of proceeding. This is the process by which the board adjudicates how the general law applies to a particular situation based on an evidentiary record presented during the hearing. So the board has 2 key responsibilities in this matter. The first is to determine any contested facts, and the second is to apply legal standards to the facts. You may apply only the standards already contained in the ordinance. You are not permitted to change or modify those standards during this hearing or as part of your decision in the case. In conducting this hearing, certain safeguards must be instituted in order to give the applicant a fair hearing. The applicant has the right to cross-examine witnesses and offer rebuttal evidence. The procedures of the ordinance must be followed. Board members may question any witness at any time during the hearing. Questions from the floor will not be permitted except by cross-examination from any of the sworn witnesses once they have been recognized to speak. A member must not vote on this application if the outcome of the matter being considered is reasonably likely to have a direct and substantial financial impact on the member. If such a direct and substantial financial conflict exists, the member should disclose it and ask to be excused from consideration of the matter. If any of the members present have had any contact with anyone prior to this hearing in which the particulars of this application were discussed, or if you have received letters, email messages, phone calls, or other contact from anyone concerning this matter prior to the hearing, you must disclose those communications. You must base your decision on this application entirely on the facts presented during the hearing and disregard the particulars discussed with the applicant or anybody else. Any member must base his or her decision on the evidence presented during the hearing. Any member who has developed a predetermined opinion or bias on the outcome of this application before the hearing must not participate in the decision on this application. Your decision must be based on competent, substantial, and material evidence properly entered into the record of this hearing. Crucial facts used to determine the outcome of this hearing must be based on sworn statements made by witnesses during the hearing. While you may be presented before or during the hearing with copies of unsworn statements that have been contained in letters, emails, and so forth, such unsworn evidence can only be used to corroborate or supplement other sworn evidence presented during the hearing. Unsworn evidence such as letters or emails can never be used as the basis for your decision. At this time, if any member needs to recuse themselves from this hearing for one of the reasons that I have explained, please request that a motion be made to recuse you from participating in this hearing or voting on this matter at this time. None? Okay. At this time, if any member needs to disclose a communication about the subject of this hearing that the member has had with an applicant or anybody else prior to this hearing, now is the opportunity for you to disclose such communication.
John, where? The applicant is the town.
I understand
This has
that.
been before the board, so.
I
just-
understand, but
so
we have to
everybody
go through the
so
same process.
So that, understand, just for the benefit of the public who may be watching and not understand that,
We have to treat the
we-
town just like any other applicant,
we're going to treat ourselves just like anybody.
which is why we
else.
go through the process,
Yes.
instead of
Sure.
just going forward with building something, so.
Yep.
But if there's anybody who's received any ex parte information, this would be the time to disclose that, and then we can discuss whether that would affect your ability to be fair and impartial.
Any more than what we've seen, the site plan,
Correct.
understanding what's going
The
on.
materials in that agenda packet that's been available to the public, right?
All right.
All right, if none, all right, at this time, we will, the town clerk will swear the applicant or any witnesses who plan to provide testimony or evidence in this case. So if you'll just approach the clerk, Ms. Wyatt, and anybody else who's going to be presenting evidence at this time, this would be the opportunity to be sworn.
Would you mind coming up and being sworn just in case?
Yep. Good.
Raise your right hand, place your left hand on the Bible. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
All right, so at this time, we will begin the evidentiary presentation, beginning with the staff's presentation by the Planning and Development Director, Kelly Wyatt.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I went ahead and just put the site plan up on the screen so you can look at that as we move through the agenda packet. As noted, this is a special use site plan review for construction of a 2-story, 8-bedroom dormitory. It's approximately 3,460 square feet in area, 2 stories, as noted, 8-bedroom dormitory. It's a dormitory for the purpose of zoning classification. It's going to function as a duplex. So I've noted that in there as well. The dormitory will be for use by the town of Nags Head workforce or as approved by the town manager. This is going to be located at 425 West Health Center Drive. So this is the location of the existing community care clinic. The proposed dormitory would be in the vicinity and location of the existing non-functional helipad. The zoning classification is SED 80, Special Environmental District. Properties to the northwest, south, and east are all zoned SED 80 as well. Looking at the applicable zoning regulations, first want to look at the use. Pursuant to the text amendment that was recently adopted by this Board of Commissioners at their September 4th meeting, dormitory is a special use within the SED 80 district. I won't go through each of the standards that must be met in section 7.10, subsection 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, but as you'll note in your packet, the application is consistent with all of those. For lot coverage, the SED 80 district has a minimum of 20% allowable lot coverage of the total lot area. So when the surveyor and architect started working on this, they did an as-built of the site and found that there was 28.6% lot coverage already existing there. So at first it was like, oh, you know, we're already over that 20. But when we did a little bit of research, we found out that this area used to be zoned SPD 40, special plan development, where the lot coverage in that district was allowed to be 30%. And I included some background material for that in the packet. But that's an explanation of how it got to 28.6% originally. The increase in lot coverage, however, it is beyond the current allowable limit, and it does constitute a site nonconformity. Pursuant to section 5.4 of the UDO, nonconforming site conditions may continue, but they cannot be increased. So we have a nonconforming lot coverage at 28.6. As you can see with the proposed site plan, after the helipad and some other elements were demoed and then the new improvements were applied, we came up at 28.3%. So that lot coverage was actually decreased. So there's no increase in the degree of nonconformity, and that's acceptable. Maximum allowable height is going to be 35 feet. Of course, you can go to 42 if you have an 812 roof pitch. This is proposed to have an 812 roof pitch, and it's at 32 feet, so we're compliant with that. Section 10.82 of the UDO speaks to the commercial design standards that would apply to this project. It must adhere to those set forth in Part 5 of the UDO. As proposed, the project would comply with those standards, including a human scale design with a second floor covered porch, residential style single or double hung windows, board and batten siding, gable brackets. I have in your staff report that we intended to incorporate some other desirable elements such as workable shutters and column trim. But when you look in the packet, what you'll see is we actually have column trim and simulated wood shingles in place. So we did add some more desirable elements to the architectural design there. So it is compliant with their standards. Article 10, Table 10.2 talks about the required parking for this type of use. Says that we need to provide 1 parking space for every 4 occupants. This structure, we anticipate having a maximum occupancy of 16. So a total of 4 parking spaces would not be adequate. Knowing what the structure is intended for, we would recommend that there be a minimum of 16 parking spaces for each of the 16 potential occupants. Currently, there are 37 existing parking spaces on site. Based upon application of the medical office parking standard for the community care clinic, which also is located on site, we estimate that that would need approximately 25 parking spaces, leaving 12 available for the dormitory use. Again, ideally, we would have 16. So there is a mechanism in the UDO under section 10.15.2.2 where you can consider shared parking through a special use permit process. When multiple uses on the site have staggered hours or differing peak parking demands, under this provision, no more than 50% of the required parking spaces for the proposed use can be shared. Staff is requesting that the Board of Commissioners consider approving the shared parking provision to address the 4 additional parking spaces needed to meet that 16 spaces for the dormitory. The community care clinic operates between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. Monday through Friday, and it is closed on the weekends. In contrast, the town's ocean rescue typically work from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. With some early morning training sessions. So given those staggered hours, we feel like there would be minimal overlap between the clinic and ocean rescue. I won't read them all, but section 10.15.2.2, those findings are included in your packet. And if you review those, this request would meet each of those findings. With regard to landscaping, there are several sections of the UDO that speak to buffering and landscaping. However, due to the design and location of the structure, there would be no applicable landscaping or buffering requirements necessary. I did want to touch on the special land disturbance considerations that we have in the SED 80 district. Any removal of any tree with a diameter of, let's see, what is it, 4 inches at breast height is going to be prohibited in the SED 80 district. There are some exceptions. The exceptions includes trees with principal trees within the principal building site and a 20-foot perimeter around it, within required access ways, parking lots, driveways, utility installations, and a 5-foot perimeter around those areas and within the septic tank and drain field area. Other exemptions apply to trees that pose a threat to public facilities and services or are in decline due to disease. At this time, there are no trees proposed for removal that fall outside those parameters. As we get into it, there may be, and if that occurs, we'll make sure that we go through the process with the Planning Board and the Board of Commissioners to have those larger trees approved for removal. At this time, there's no additional parking lot lighting being proposed. The only lighting would be just the structure lighting associated with the dormitory. There's no signage being proposed either. At the time of the report, we did not have Dare County Health Department approval for the septic system, but we do have that now, so I apologize it wasn't in there, but we do have the improvement permit in hand and 3 sets of stamped plans, so we're meeting that expectation. There's been no changes proposed to the existing traffic circulation patterns on site. Additionally, as you can see, lot coverage was actually reduced. There's been no importation of fill will be needed. So there's no need for stormwater management on the site. Fire has looked at this. It is going to be required to meet the all applicable North Carolina Fire Prevention Code requirements. Public Services looked at this and has also reviewed and approved it as well. We'll note when you look at your plans, there's drawings in there with the expectation of having this structure sprinkler protected as well. So that's my report for you. When the Planning Board reviewed this, they had a positive recommendation, unanimous recommendation for approval. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Does the board have any questions for Ms. Wyatt?
Since you brought up the parking and the adjacent entity, can you? I know that there've been some conversations with the director there, and if you, I think probably for the public benefit, who may be concerned about that facility and its viability, just understanding that they're comfortable with the operating arrangements that we'll have there with adjacent and with shared parking. Either Kelly, you or Andy.
I'll let Kelly speak.
Okay. Andy and I actually did meet with the community care clinic representatives, and they did have some concerns based upon the number of clinicians and the people that they have going there. But once we talked about the staggered hours of Ocean Rescue and their staff, that put them at ease with that. They did mention that they do have some evening openings where they have a clinician in there in the evenings, but that there would not be any, there's no concerns with our Ocean Rescue staff in that scenario either. They did mention that they currently use the existing helipad for the food pantry to show up and distribute food. But in talking with myself and town manager Andy Garman, we think that we can find other areas for that to be facilitated. Not saying that it would always happen, but we do have the parking lot for Town Park right behind there, and there is adequate parking there. So if need be, that's an option as well. We're happy to work with them. So after a conversation, they seem to be at ease and comfortable with it. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. John.
Any other questions for Kelly? Kelly, have anything else to present?
I do not.
All right, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Is there any member of the public who is sworn that wishes to comment on this? If not, does the board wish to receive any further evidence on these applications before you begin your deliberations? All right, if not, we will conclude the public hearing and evidentiary presentation on this matter, and the board may begin its deliberations.
Okay. All right, very good. I'll start with Commissioner Sanders.
I think everything's pretty straightforward.
Okay. All right, great. Mr. Sears.
Yeah, they made everything. Andy, we don't have a agreement for parking, or do we? Is it something hard and in writing yet, or is it something?
An agreement for parking? There is no agreement. We normally just do it through a special use permit, and if the board approves this, then that will essentially be the agreement.
Okay.
And as Kelly said, they seem comfortable with that arrangement, given the hours of the use of the property.
And as the property owner and lessor, I think we'll probably deal with it in the future too if it becomes an issue. Yep. Thank you, Megan. All right. Then a motion to approve would be in order.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Kelly. Appreciate that. That brings us to public hearing number 2 to consider amendments to the UDO. John?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On this matter, the board sits simply as a legislative body, and so the rules and cautions that I just provided with regard to the last public hearing do not apply here. So on this matter, we'll begin with the presentation of the staff's analysis of these proposed amendments by Planning Director Kelly Wyatt.
Thank you again. As you noted, these are proposed amendments to the UDO as it relates to the SPDC Village at Nags Head Commercial 1 zoning district to accommodate the use of an EMS station. In late 2023, staff presented a brief update to the planning board regarding the potential future construction of a Dare County EMS station at 105 West Sea Chase Drive. During the update, staff indicated that amendments to the Unified Development Ordinance may be required to facilitate the project, and the planning board at that time agreed that staff should pursue any of those amendments. Dare County has been working with Oakley Collier Architects on the proposed design for the county's emergency services project. After reviewing the preliminary development renderings and analyzing the existing ordinance for the Village Commercial 1 district, the following amendments to the UDO would be necessary. An amendment to section 9.36, which I have up here on the screen. Within the SPDC Village at Nags Head District Commercial 1 to include a county EMS station as a permitted use. Also an amendment to section 9.21.8.2 to reduce the front yard setback requirement from 75 feet to 45 feet. When we were looking at this section, it appeared that the current regulations were designed to primarily apply to the large shopping center. That is generally what's considered to be part of the C1 Village District, and not so much a standalone independent structure. And then the last amendment would be to section 10.16, required parking by use, to establish a parking standard for the new use category of EMS station. I'll pull that up. The proposal there would be 1 parking space per employee on duty and 1 parking space per 200 square feet of training facility and customer service area. This parking standard is also the standard used for the town of Kill Devil Hills and their new EMS facilities there. So, and in speaking with Oakley Collier, it's adequate for their proposal. Staff does find that the amendment is consistent with the comprehensive land use plan. When the planning board heard this at their September 17th meeting, they did vote unanimously to recommend approval of the text amendments as presented. I am happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, does the board have any questions for Ms. Wyatt? None?
No.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Kelly.
Thank you.
Does any member of the public wish to comment on these proposed amendments? If so, this is your opportunity. Does the board wish to receive any other information before you deliberate on this matter? If not, we will conclude the public hearing and the board may begin its deliberation on the proposed amendments.
And John, our motion needs to include if there's a motion to approve, it needs to include the finding of consistency.
That's correct, it does.
Okay. Started this in. Megan, anything this morning with regard to this? Mr. Sears?
No.
Mr. Sanders? All good. All right, in which case a motion would be in order.
The motion could be to approve it as presented and to also approve the proposed consistency statement.
Yes.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. Thank you, Kelly, and Planning Board by extension. Thank you. And you're going to stay there and give us the planning report. Thank you, John.
Yes, sir.
I am. I'll try to run through this report pretty quickly. Stop me if you have any questions as we go through. The planning board had several items when they met on October 15th to consider and discuss. They reviewed the sketch plan for the proposed EMS station at 105 Sea Chase, which we just spoke about, the text amendments related to that. The planning board also voted to recommend adoption of an increased parking standard for hotels. That was on your consent agenda today, and that's going to be public hearing at your upcoming meeting in December. They also had discussions on the hotel overlay district and whether that was still suitable and consistent with their comprehensive land use plan, and next steps on accessory dwelling units following our community workshops. The planning board's next meeting will be on November 19th, and it will include consideration of a special use site plan amendment for the Soundside event site. They're seeking approval of a boardwalk and some pickleball courts. And then they will also be considering the site plan review for the EMS station, which I apologize, that was not included in your packet or for your consideration. And then also continued conversation on the hotel overlay and ADUs. The Septic Health Advisory Committee met on October 21st. They had a lot of great discussion. It was primarily centered on the new mapping efforts to advance the decentralized wastewater management plan. We've been fortunate to have Ella Trainer as an intern helping us this past month. Ella is here today in the back row. She's a junior at UNC Chapel Hill, and she's here with the Outer Banks field site at CSI. She's been working with Connor Twitty out in the field using GPS equipment to geolocate septic systems and drain fields, coming back into the office and working with Joe Costello to create the interactive map for the town's septic infrastructure. Ella's been a huge help, and we appreciate all her time and efforts, so thank you very much. There have been some advancements with the Estuarine Shoreline Management Plan as well. We have an updated scope of work for engineering and design of projects along Villa Dunes and Soundside Road with Moffett and Nickel and Biohabitats. It includes a 60% design documents and permits to prepare us for any future construction. We have a kickoff meeting scheduled for November 21st, so we're going to be working on getting that information out as soon as we have an agenda in place. This all came together pretty quickly. Our sand relocation program, while you can't have equipment on the beach prior to November 15th, we have started accepting the applications for both sand relocation and the dune management cost share program. We started that on November 1st, and we received a lot of applications thus far, so I believe people are now aware of it and certainly taking advantage of it, which is wonderful. We do have a lot going on with our Committee for Art and Culture in Dowdy Park. We have holiday markets coming up in November and December. Those will be on Saturday, November 9th, 30th, and December 14th from 9 a.m. to noon. We have an evening market as well. That's going to be on Thursday, December 5th from 4 to 7, and we're going to have about 65 vendors at each of these markets. Also on November 30th, we have our 4th annual tree lighting ceremony. And we do have confirmation that Santa Claus will be stopping by that evening, so it's really exciting. We have our 3rd annual candy cane hunt on Wednesday, December 11th, and that's gonna start around 4:45. And all of this information can be found on the Dowdy Park Events Facebook page. We have 2 other projects that I wanted to mention. Artist Chris Wheeler has completed painting the murals at the skate park, and we're planning a community pizza and paint party later this month, so the details on that will be coming out soon. We also have Manio High School art students painting a crosswalk at the intersection of Bonnet Street and Wrightsville Avenue on the morning of Saturday, November 16th. This type of public art project has been discussed for many years, going all the way back to the Gallery Row revitalization project. So a lot of thanks to the Art and Culture Committee, specifically Molly Vaughn, who's on the committee, the students for making this happen, and then also big thank you to the police department and the public services department for prepping and getting everything ready for this. So that's exciting.
Nice. That is exciting. All right. Any
And that's all
questions
I
for
have.
Kelly?
No, a lot of work.
No?
Thanks.
Nice. It's good. And all of that, the department's running well too with the permits and whatnot?
Yes, absolutely.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That brings us to new business, and that would be committee reports. And I will start with Commissioner Sanders. Anything to report?
Deputy Commissioner White, she kind of took care of it by kicking off the party, kicking off the Eastern Shoreline thing, so yeah, it's exciting.
Okay.
It's exciting.
Good. I attended my first Jeanette's Peer Advisory Committee meeting, and we got an interesting report on what's going on there. Lots of cool projects, and more later. Thank you. Anything?
Nothing from Tourism Housing Task Force. We assigned Andy to the NC 100 that we're applying for, so we'll see how that goes.
All right. Very good. Thank you. Megan?
I attended my first, my first septic health committee back as the commissioner. Kelly Wyatt gave an excellent update, so I won't repeat what she said. But the only thing I did want to add was Connor Twitty shared with us that he passed his on-site wastewater operating exam. So I just want to say congratulations again to him. I also was lucky enough, when I was heading back to my shop after the meeting, I saw Connor and Ella across the street checking one of the water meters. So I ran across the street so I could see it in person and stuff, and that was really cool to see them at work and what they're working on.
Cool.
We also had our Government Education Access Channel committee meeting on the 27th, last Wednesday. We approved our LPDI grant for Duck. We discussed the film festival idea more. I think we're going to table that till after the first of the year to hopefully gain some more interest in it. And then lastly, I just wanted to add that our Ash Wednesday documentary was shown at the Environmental Film Festival this past Saturday at Jeanette's Pier, and it also won an award for Best Local Documentary as well. So extra
very nice.
congratulations to Roberta for all her work on that as well.
Yeah, no kidding. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Megan. Appreciate that. So that brings us now to consideration of an amendment to the traffic control map. Chris?
Perfect, thank you. Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm here before you today with a request for an amendment to the town's traffic control map. We've received a request for no parking in the area that you see up there, which is the cul-de-sac on South Linda Lane, the very south end of Linda Lane, in the old Nags Head Place subdivision. Due to some of the recent improvements with the town's storm water management plan in the area and with the added storm garden that you can see in the center of the cul-de-sac, it's made it difficult for sanitation fire vehicles to maneuver when there are vehicles parked on the shoulder. It seems during the peak season this has become an issue, and after speaking with fire department and public works, we are recommending this area be deemed no parking between the signs and a towaway zone. It would just be the area that is marked by the red on the outside of the cul-de-sac there. We'd be willing to answer any questions you might have.
All right.
motion to approve the request.
All right, is there a second? I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. And that brings us right on time to discussion of the scope and engineering for the 26-27 beach nourishment project.
All right. Good morning again, Mayor and Board of Commissioners. At your last meeting, there was a presentation that was prepared by Moffitt and Nichol to talk about the annual beach condition survey. And from that survey, they had noted that there were several areas of accelerated erosion along the last mile in the south end of Nags Head, as well as a couple areas in the northern reaches where there was localized erosion that had taken place. And so with the recent adoption of the multi-decadal beach nourishment master plan, the nourishment triggers had changed from what we previously had approved. The previous approval showed it as a whole, whereas the new master plan breaks it down by reach. And so when comparing the annual beach condition survey to the new nourishment triggers, there were some areas where in the south end in reaches 3 and 4, where some of those transects fell below the nourishment triggers. And there were some areas localized in the northern reaches where it was approaching the triggers. The nourishment triggers, we'll go ahead and cover that in a little bit more detail later on in the agenda. But with that, there was a concern to go ahead and maybe accelerate the planning for the next renourishment project. And so we had asked Moffitt and Nichol to go ahead and prepare a proposal. I've got that up on the screen, and it breaks down this by a task order, and it breaks down the various segments of the planning for the next project between preliminary design, final design, bid documents, as well as permitting. You may recall earlier this year, the town received a coastal storm damage mitigation grant for planning for the next project, and that covers approximately 50% of these costs. In addition, I wanted to go ahead and mention that also back in September, there was a system off the coast that did some pretty significant damage, especially to the southern coast of North Carolina, down in Carteret, New Hanover, Onslow, and Brunswick County. And there may be a federal disaster declaration for those beaches. And so Dare County has been asked to go ahead and get in contact with the local towns to provide an estimate for the losses. And so we have gone ahead and provided that information to Dare County to see if we can become eligible for that declaration. And that will be confirmed with our fall survey. Our fall survey, the data collection occurred last week, and so we'll know the extent of our losses, which we could potentially use if we file for a public assistance application, if made eligible for that. But back to the requests, there are 2 actions that are being requested, and that would be for the authorization for the town manager to execute the attached professional services task order with Moffitt and Nichol, as well as request board consideration of an amendment, which is amendment number 13 to the Beach Nourishment Maintenance Capital Project Ordinance in the amount of $481,940 to permit the outlined scope of work. So I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions? David? No? No questions? All right. David, will you restate those 2? Because I think we need to do this as 2 motions.
Yes. So I've got it up on the screen. So authorization for the town manager to execute the attached professional services task order with Moffett and Nichol.
Okay, can I get a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Okay. And the second is the consideration of amendment to the beach nourishment maintenance capital project ordinance in the amount of $481,940 to permit the outlined scope of work.
Okay. All right, a motion would be in order.
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
And David, can you restate where that money is coming from?
The money comes from the beach nourishment maintenance capital project ordinance, so we have a dedicated fund for that.
And again, half of the money was received as part of a grant through the state for this scope of work.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, great. Thank you, David.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate that. I think, well, let's see, we have town manager. John, do we have anything else from the town attorney today?
I do have one brief thing I wanted to report to the board on.
Okay.
There was a case decided by the Court of Appeals the week before last, earlier in the month of October, in which the court found that a public body, particularly a county, had violated the open meetings laws by having a meeting with remote participation from a member who was included in the, multiple members were included to count a quorum and in taking the vote. And they ended up nullifying the action of the board because this was done outside of the statement of emergency as declared by the governor. So it was sort of a reiteration that having these meetings with remote participation is no longer permitted absent special circumstances as declared by the governor or by a local authority. Just wanted to mention that, for future reference as the board goes forward and has other meetings when you might need to have remote participation. It's permissible for somebody to listen and to even make comments, but they can't be included in the quorum and they cannot vote on matters coming before the board. So just wanted to alert y'all to that. But other than that, I have nothing further to present.
If we had some circumstance that required a local emergency but not a state emergency, the mayor can declare a state of emergency.
Correct.
And if necessary, we could have a meeting remotely.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you. I hope that never happens. All right, so that brings us to items from the town manager. Andy?
Well, I guess we have a time-specific item at 11
Oh, we do.
a.m., but, I believe Moffett and Nichol is here, so we might go ahead and do that.
Let's do that. All right, very good.
All right. So good morning again. So this agenda item is for the consideration of the beach maintenance and monitoring plan. This is a plan that maintains the town's eligibility for FEMA public assistance. This originally, with our first project back in 2011, there was an approved beach maintenance and monitoring plan that was authorized at that time, not only by the board, but as well as FEMA, that outlined various things to include the morphological setting of the town, the town's construction, and any subsequent nourishment projects, the monitoring activities associated with the projects, and outlining beach maintenance planning guidelines. And so with the approval of the multi-decadal beach nourishment master plan, that some of the information changed as far as the consideration of nourishment triggers. And so this is the second part to the approval for that master plan, is to go ahead and update the beach maintenance and monitoring plan in order to maintain our FEMA eligibility. And today we have Dr. Beth Shadone here to go ahead and present this from Moffitt and Nichol. And also included in that will be just a refresher on the beach nourishment triggers, which have changed from our previous plan. So let me go ahead and bring this up. Okay, and I present Dr. Beth Shadone from Moffitt and Nichol.
Thanks very much, David. Good morning, Mayor, Board of Commissioners. We're happy to be here. I do have, we have a new face in our crowd. We have a new staff member, Vega Sproul, who actually grew up in Kildowa Hills, and it's my understanding that Commissioner Lambert was his first boss.
Cool.
So now he's working with us, so we're happy to have him here. This is a brief outline of the presentation today. It essentially covers what's included in this beach monitoring and maintenance plan, the FEMA guidelines establishing how Nags Head's beaches qualify for public assistance, as David mentioned, brief history of all of the past projects, the ongoing annual monitoring, which we just talked about last month, and future beach nourishment planning and that difference in triggers that David just referred to. You also are required to add a description of the plan for funding future renourishment projects, and so that's also included in this document. So this is directly from the Code of Federal Regulations, talking about what qualifies for FEMA funds as restoration of damaged facilities. There's a specific item for beaches, and it states that unimproved natural beaches are not eligible. However, improved beaches are eligible, and this is how Nags Head qualifies as an engineered beach. And there are two subsets under that. Firstly, that the beach was constructed by the placement of sand of proper graining size, designed to a specific elevation, width, and slope. And this town's projects qualify because they've all been designed by qualified licensed engineers. They've been permitted by state and federal agencies. And then in addition to this, a maintenance program involving periodic renourishment must have been established and adhered to by the applicant. So this plan also documents that process as well. So again, the town has been conducting annual beach profile monitoring surveys since 2011 with that initial project. The prior trigger, the one that the town has been operating under up until now, is that renourishment would occur when less than 50% of the initial nourishment sand remains on the beach within the project boundaries and calculated to a specific elevation of minus 19 feet NAVD 88, which is the essential, the operating sort of depth of closure. And that just means that most of the sand outside of that depth is not moving on a very regular basis, and that's the sand that's kind of protecting the town's infrastructure. As David mentioned, those renourishment triggers have been updated as part of the master plan, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation. This is a section of the FEMA Public Assistance Guide, and it details what is required by FEMA to support eligibility of a beach for this public assistance funding. And the beach funding is under Category G, FEMA's Category G. So the things that need to be included, all design studies, plans, documentation for the original nourishment, as well as any subsequent renourishment project, documentation and details of that maintenance plan, describing how the need for renourishment is determined, how that's funded, and also pre and post storm profiles that extend at least to that depth of closure of minus 19 feet. The town's program actually currently goes out a little bit farther, and I'll go into more details about that. And that is just a typical beach profile that y'all are very familiar with, indicating the berm, offshore bar, and out to the depth of closure. So just a brief overview of the town's nourishment history. Of course, that initial locally funded project was conducted in 2011. It extended over about 10 miles of Nags Head shoreline from Bonnet Street down to the southern end of town, placed 4.6 million cubic yards. The berm was designed to be at elevation +6 and AVD 88. And something that we use a lot is the placement density, and that's essentially how much volume is placed per linear foot of the beach, and that gives an idea of kind of how much sand is pumped along any specific section, and that density was anywhere between 50 to 140 cubic yards per foot in that first project. Utilized offshore borrow areas that were initially identified by the Army Corps, and it was funded by a combination of county and town funds. Then the 2019 project, same area was nourished, Bonnet Street down to the southern end of town, about 10 miles. It placed a little bit less, 4 million cubic yards. Same design essentially, berm at +6. They actually built dunes in that project along the southern part of town, reaches 3 north, 3 south, and 4. Placement density was a little bit higher, partially because of the dune construction in the southern part. Anywhere between 60 and 155 cubic yards per foot. Again, using the offshore borrow areas, sort of similar to the first project, but then there was another borrow area that was a little bit further north that was identified as well for that project. And this project was actually funded by the county and the town, but also there were, during the planning process, many of y'all may remember, Hurricane Matthew occurred right after the town initiated planning. And so there was about a little bit less than 1.5 million cubic yards lost during Matthew, and then that was sort of wrapped into this project. So that 1.4-ish million cubic yards was paid for by FEMA, and the rest of the project was paid for by local funds. 2022 project was a more localized project that was reaches 2 through 4, basically south of Jeanette's Pier area, and then that only placed 611, 259 cubic yards. The reason for this project was that Hurricane Dorian, as many of you remember, occurred in 2019, right after that project I just described had been constructed. So those losses were documented. That was funded by FEMA. The volume lost in Dorian was a little bit less than what was placed here, but that volume was increased just to kind of make it constructible. Dredgers don't like to place a very small placement density. In this project, you notice that's much smaller than the other two. It ranged from 14 to 57 cubic yards per foot, and 14 is kind of towards the low end of what a dredging company likes to place. So some additional funding was added to the FEMA funding from the state CSDM grant funds, and then town match as required from those state funds. The monitoring protocols also are described in the maintenance and monitoring program plan. These are, as David said, McKim-and-Creed was just out doing this. There's transects with a minimum of 500 feet spacing. They go from the landward side of the dune all the way out to a depth of -30. Part of that is a person walking and wading out to wherever they can get to. They do that wading survey at low tide, and then they do a hydrographic survey with the boat, and they do that at high tide, so they got some overlap there. All of the land surveys and hydrographic surveys are performed according to standards. And as I mentioned, the town currently contracts with McKim-and-Creed to do these surveys. The data analysis, which we talked about last month, we analyzed what's going on with the shoreline change at the mean high water elevation, volume change above different target elevations. We look at both short-term changes and long-term changes and how the beach nourishment projects are performing. So, to kind of cover this difference, what's new in the updated plan. As I mentioned, the previous trigger established with the first project considered that volume loss across the entire nourished oceanfront. So when half of that sand was gone, that is when the town was committed to renourishing. As part of the master plan, we have The town, along with Monmouth and Nickel, have worked to figure out a desired level of protection. That's a 25-year storm, and drilled down to what volume is needed to provide that level of protection regionally across the different areas of the town based on representative profiles. And so those representative profile results have been compiled into reach volumetric triggers. And this is a table that came from the master plan. It's also included in the monitoring and maintenance plan. This is the important column of this table, which tells us what is the volumetric trigger above the minus 19-foot elevation that is needed to provide that protection across each of these reaches. And so those are sort of the decision-making points now, broken out by the reaches. This slide I showed last month in the monitoring presentation, where we went all the way back to 2011 out to the summer of 2024 to compare with these triggers. And I did also have another slide which David referred to, which looked at it by individual profiles to kind of identify any localized hotspot areas. The green bar here is what the situation was, volumetric situation was in summer 2024. As David mentioned, we're about to get the data from the fall survey that was authorized last month, and we'll be able to update what that now looks like. In terms of the funding that the town has used to fund the projects, there are municipal service districts, property taxes. There is also the Dare County Beach Nourishment Fund, which is funded by occupancy taxes. There is potential funding available from the state coastal storm damage mitigation grant funds, which the town has successfully applied for and obtained in the past. And also, all of this documentation is geared toward ensuring that the town continues to qualify for public assistance, FEMA Category G funding for any declared disasters. So going back to kind of what's required, making sure we've checked all the boxes. We've compiled all of the previous nourishment and renourishment documentation. We have provided the details of the monitoring and the maintenance plan. We've documented how the town is determining the need for renourishment and how it is funding that need. Every summer, the annual surveys provide a pre-storm condition that can then be compared with a post-storm survey to develop those volume losses if there is a named storm. As David mentioned, it actually works out really well that the town performed the fall survey, and that quote coincided with the other PTC 8 event. So that documentation will be available if that declaration is made for Dare County. And the last bullet, as I just talked about, any post-storm survey needed can be conducted and compared with those annual summer surveys. So everything's covered that's required to support the qualification of the town's beaches for FEMA funding. Thanks very much. Any questions?
Questions, board? All right, very good. Good job, board, supporting that fall survey. That was fortunate.
Yeah.
So we will, included in your board packet was a copy of the beach monitoring and maintenance plan. And so we will need board approval to adopt this plan as part of the overall process prior to receiving FEMA approval.
All right. If there are no immediate questions, then a motion to approve the updated plan would be in order.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Thank you very much for keeping us up to date and seeing if we can move this up and along a little bit. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I think I've got the next item as well.
Okay. Continue, please.
All So the next item on the agenda is an update to the Public Services Complex. This is a map that I have been presenting all along, which shows the progress of the project by color. Just a quick review of the map. So you've got Lark Avenue, where I've got my cursor going up and down, which bisects the project. On the right-hand side of the page, you've got the administration building. And then on the left-hand side of the project, you've got several buildings to include a combined fleet maintenance, facilities maintenance, and sanitation building. Right here, storage equipment building. Here on the left-hand side of the page, and then the top left is the water distribution building. And highlighted here in green is the last building, and that's the vehicle storage building. The colors designate those buildings that have been occupied. There will be you'll notice a change between last month and this month in that this equipment building here on the left-hand side of the page has since been occupied. And so town staff has started utilizing that facility for storage of different equipment and materials related to their daily operations. Let me just show you where we were last month with that project. There was some finishing work taking place interior to the building. This is currently where we stand today, and you can see on the right-hand side of the picture, we've got some sanitation cans as well as some other materials that are stored within. And yeah, this is a much-needed space for our folks up there at Public Services. This building right here that I'm circling, that is the vehicle storage building. This color change from under construction to nearing completion. We anticipate that this building will be near occupation by the end of this month. Let me show you some photos. This is where we were last month with the garage door installations taking place. We had some utility work that was ongoing, and this is where we sit today. You can see we've got some of the finishing details on the exterior. We've got the signage that is placed up on the corner of the building. On the interior, it's finishing off a lot of the utility work to include the mechanical systems, the fire suppression system, as well as the overhead lighting, which has recently been installed. And this is the picture from the exterior, which shows all the garage doors being in place and ready to go. Another space, although it doesn't involve much in the way of vertical construction, is this other green space that is noted here in the center of the project. This is where we have 2 washout bays, fueling station, as well as some additional parking. And I've got some photos from this area. This tank right here is an oil water separator, which will be plumbed into those washout bays and then connected to a on-site wastewater disposal system, which has currently been put in place. We also have, you can see the beginnings of the retaining walls. Each one of these washout bays, along with the fuel island, is going to be separated by a retaining wall that's about 3.5 feet high. And so this is the concrete crew that is in the process of going ahead and installing that rebar prior to forming of those retaining walls. And so in addition to that, we've got other vendors that we've been working with, the fueling vendors, the foundation for the canopy, which is going to cover this, a good portion of this area. That has been completed. We've got those canopy columns going in next, and then all the plumbing lines for the fueling station, which is going to be sequenced in here within the next week or so. In addition to that, we've got a small equipment building to house that wash equipment for those washout bays. And so they'll be looking at going ahead and doing some under slab work before they go ahead and pour that foundation. And so progress is being made. We're still staying on track with our schedule, plus or minus a week or two, but moving along, and we'll be glad to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Any questions, folks?
No questions. Just want to say I really enjoyed at our retreat when we got to do the tour, to actually walk around and see it. It's amazing.
It is. Yes. Very nice. Commissioner Sears.
David, how much longer do you think?
I'm hoping that we will be finished up with everything by the end of the calendar year.
Good.
Okay. All right. Good. Bob?
Good, thank you.
I have an Amy question, actually. So we heard in the nomination this morning about the management of fuel cards, and
Yes.
we've been without a fueling facility during the construction period here for the most part. About how much are we paying over what we would be getting on contract? Do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head. I would have to sit down and look at it. But I do know the point of the fuel cards that we have is because we don't have to pay the excise tax because we're government.
Right.
So the fuel cards we have are for government, so we are not paying the excise tax on that. So that, and then we get a rebate on it. So I'm sure it's a little bit more, but I can, when I get back, or I can start figuring it out and let you know. But we are not paying the excise tax on it. That's the main point of the cards
Okay.
we have.
All right.
So,
Very
yeah.
good. Thank you. I just wanted to, since if anybody was watching the meeting in the public and we talked about fuel cards, I wanted folks to understand why that's a temporary condition. We're not paying market or retail rate for fuel all the time.
And going back towards the start of construction of the project, we did have a temporary fueling station set up to the point where we could no longer spatially accommodate that.
Gotcha.
So we did everything within our power to try to minimize those costs.
Yes, sir. Understand that. Thank you very much.
All right.
Appreciate that. That brings us to consideration of acceptance of a Land and Water Fund grant for a conservation easement. Andy, is this you?
Yes. I'll start it off, and I'll let Amy Miller state her piece on this. But we also have Aaron McCall with the Nature Conservancy here with us. He just walked back in. He was also instrumental in this grant. So without further ado, in about April of 2023, the town was approached by Aaron McCall and his colleague Fred and they wanted to explore the possibility of the town applying for a grant to place a conservation easement on a property that we owned around the fresh pond. And this map on the screen here is something that they had developed several years ago, and this is sort of their goals for acquiring and conserving property as part of Nags Head Woods. Obviously, they're very interested in protecting this area, and this involves joint effort between the Nature Conservancy, Nags Head, and Coral Hills. And so obviously this large tract here in an orangish color, that is the property that we're talking about that the town owns. This large property here in green, this is a jointly owned tract that the town purchased in the early 90s with the Nature Conservancy that we also have under conservation easements. There are several other private properties that were purchased by the Nature Conservancy that they own in Nags Head Woods. And then there's been some properties that were acquired through Land and Water Fund, or actually formerly Clean Water Management Trust Fund grants. So there's a conservation easement on those. So this particular property is one of the few large properties that hadn't been placed in conservation. The town owns it, and a large portion of it is the watershed for the fresh pond. They also manage some trails back on this property through a lease agreement with the town. We have a water supply watershed AEC that surrounds the fresh pond. You know, as the town used to supply water from the fresh pond, we wanted to make sure we could protect the quality of the water. So there was an interest in maintaining an area around the fresh pond without any development. And through the years, I think the town has been interested in maintaining that water supply watershed, even though we don't necessarily need it because we're not making water anymore from that pond. But in 2017 and later in 2022, the town adopted a new comprehensive plan, and the comprehensive plan has a section dedicated to preservation of natural areas, and obviously Nags Head Woods is mentioned there and has a section dedicated to it. And this particular project was one that was mentioned in the plan as being a goal of the town to eventually place this property into conservation. So when Aaron met with us and said, well, you know, you can get grant funding to purchase the development rights for this property, you know, our ears perked up. And so at that time, we started to talk to the board about it. We had an initial conversation with the board about the possibility of this, and then later on, last summer, we talked in detail about our application that we're going to be preparing. And so we went forward from there, and we put together an application. We had the property appraised. I believe the initial application was for about $4.6 million to purchase the development rights for this, and then the 50% match up to $9 million would be based on the property's appraised value. And so Amy has been working relentlessly on this. I will say that several times during this process, we felt like it was going to stop, that we wouldn't be able to complete the application for various reasons. And Amy never took no for an answer. And she always found a way to keep this moving. And she was posing questions back to the agency folks that they really couldn't answer, and they didn't have a good reason for it. And so they were like, well, I guess you're right. We're going to let it proceed. And that has played itself out to the point where last month we received a letter stating that we had been awarded $4 million for the conservation easement on this property. And unlike other grants, this is not for a specific project. This is for the purchase of development rights. So that fund, that money, can be used at the discretion of the town. And so it's a huge opportunity for the town. And so essentially, we're going to be asking the board today whether or not you're interested in accepting this grant award. And, you know, we obviously haven't publicized this yet. This will be something that we publicize after today. I think Roberta's probably got a press release already in the works. But, you know, it's a very big effort, and we really thank the assistance of the Nature Conservancy and our own staff for helping to make this a reality. We do have some additional steps we're going to have to follow through with, and I want Amy to come up and talk a little bit about that. You know, I would have had her present this whole thing, but I knew she wouldn't give herself credit for any of it, so I wanted to be able to do that. And so with that said, you know, we are going to be asking the board for authorization to enter into a contract with the state once we receive it for accepting this grant. And so there is another map that we have included in your packet that's shown here, and it shows you the boundaries of this property. There are certain portions of the property we've excluded from this because we use those for other purposes. For instance, the police shooting range is going to be excluded. The pond itself is excluded, and there's a buffer around the pond. Wellfield Road is also excluded, where we have some water infrastructure. And then there's also two other parcels that the town owns that we hadn't previously placed in conservation that we've added into this, and those are also shown here in red, these smaller parcels. One is 7.7 acres, the other is 4.3 acres. So anyway, Amy, turn it over to you.
Thank you for the shout out, but it was definitely a team effort, and again, you know, Aaron's here and we appreciate the work that he and Laura and Justin helped us with. It was their idea, and you know, the Land and Water Fund did make two site visits, including one with their board, and it was really an easy sell because you could tell how much passion they have for this land and they really know it. And anyway, it was, they really helped us out a lot. But the next steps, if the board does, I guess when I spoke with the Land and Water Fund, there's not like a resolution or anything like that. There's no formality that they need from the board. we just want, Andy to be able to move forward authorizing the contract with your approval. We didn't want to make a unilateral decision on that. So there's nothing formal that they need, but we wanted it for ourselves. So the first thing that we would need to do is, like Andy had mentioned, we did get an appraisal on it. But because of the amount, any grant over, I think, $1 million or $500,000, which obviously this would be, we do need to get a second appraisal done to confirm the fair market value by somebody, a different person that had done it. So that would be the first step, which we're confident that would, still confirm the amount of the grant. And like Andy had mentioned, the $4 million, that was a cap that they capped all the acquisition grants at. So it was nothing that, there was not a deficiency in our application or anything like that that would have caused us to get less than what we asked for. It was just a cap that the board approved, and so we got the most that we could. So once we get that appraisal, then we're going to be doing a survey, which is probably going to take the longest amount of time to do because that's a huge project. And when we got the first appraisal, I was doing some digging. Apparently we tried to get this property surveyed at one point, but I think we're pretty much starting from scratch on that. So that's probably going to be the longest process. And they had said the contracts are usually 2 to 3 years. So obviously we're going to do what we can to expedite the process, but just knowing that, we have to do some steps in order. And we did ask for transaction costs to be a part of this grant. So legal, obviously, we're going to be writing conservation easements that will be recorded on the deeds of all 3 of these properties. So the transaction costs, like the survey and the appraisal, what she had told me is we can get those back as we spend them, so we don't have to wait until, everything's done and recorded to get those. And then, so any, whatever, the money that we get after the transaction costs, I guess that would, the board could use that at their discretion. So, and again, the tracks will be managed and monitored by TNC, like they do. And we did reserve some management rights that we are currently using. That what she had said is these are not outside of the scope of their usual contract. So it won't. We're not like trying to build a building or something like that on it. So it will definitely not. It will make the process a lot easier, I guess. We'll still continue to be allowed to do prescribed burning, maintenance of the hiking trails. I know there's utility lines in there, removal of invasive species and herbicides, and then of course the hunting program is still going to be allowed. And the easements will be held by the state. And so I'm trying to make sure I covered all my bases here. But yeah, so like I said, we don't have a formal resolution or anything like that, but we just are asking for the authorization for us to begin this process and Andy to execute the contract, which we should get soon, maybe by December, hopefully. And then, of course, the first thing I would do is, after today, I could contact our appraiser to get that going. So, thank you so much.
And then the mayor was also part of our tour when the members of the Land and Water Fund Board came down,
Right.
several trustees and their staff as well as our staff. So I don't know if you wanted to say anything about that.
I do, and remind me, if I recall, we actually as a board resolved to make application for this grant.
Yeah,
I don't remember when we
It didn't have a
did.
specific amount or anything. It was in
Right.
April. It didn't have a specific amount. It just allowed us it showed your support for.
Right. So, just one of the things I want to express to the board was when we were there walking the property with Andy and Amy and Aaron and the members of the trust fund board and the staff, they had a property for which they had given money for a conservation easement, and the municipality wanted it back to build something. And so they were concerned, and they asked the question, I think, a couple of times about had the board, in fact, resolved to do this, and was this, in fact, the board's wish, and what was the vote? And it happened to be unanimous that we did this. So while it's not a formal resolution, it is important to them. So I wanted to convey that to the board because I was there and I overheard that discussion. it's a pretty neat deal that we get paid for doing what we wanted to do with the property anyway, which is keep it in conservation. And we get to use that money for good purposes of the town. And sounds like Amy struck a really good deal with them. So we get some of these costs covered. So that's it. Any questions, board members?
No question.
Yeah. So a motion would be in order to essentially to accept the grant and authorize the contract.
Town manager to enter the contract.
Yep. And you're making that motion?
I'll make that motion.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you, and thank you to staff who put this together. Wow, very, very well done, and for being very dogged about it, so thank you.
Thank you.
Andy, do you have anything else?
Yes, there was another item I needed to bring before the board today. Unfortunately, it did not make it into the packet because this came up after the packet was essentially done, and we had some things we had to work out with the property owner. But we had a property owner come forward and needed to extend water service to their property. This particular property is 4 lots north of Dune Street on the east side of 158. There's a section of properties that don't have water. There's a gap in the water main from essentially Dune Street to Soundside Road. And so they applied for a building permit, found out it didn't have water, and so needed to pursue this process before they could get a building permit. Our town code establishes a couple of different procedures for them to extend water. One would be authorized by statute, which is essentially to the town would extend the water, and then the cost would be assessed to the property owners adjacent to the line, proportionate to their frontage along the water line. Since we don't have participation from the other property owners in this situation, we don't recommend that process here. There's a second procedure in our code, it's 44-108, that allows the owner who's requesting the line to pay for the cost of the line. And then the property owners who would be otherwise adjacent to the line, who decide they want to tap onto it in the next 10 years, would pay a fee. And then a part of that fee would be reimbursed to the property owner who extended the service. The issue with that is that there's a provision in that code section that says that it's only eligible to lots who are more than 500 feet from the closest water line. And this lot is less than 500 feet. And 500 feet, I think, is significant because it represents a city block. Carolyn and Brittany did some research on this, and this goes back to, I believe, the 70s. And we didn't find any specific reason why there was a 500-foot standard established. So we are recommending modifying that provision down to 250 feet. And so what's before you on the screen is an ordinance that would reduce that distance and then make this lot eligible to take advantage of this provision. So that would be the first action that's part of this. The second action would be approval of an agreement between the town and the property owner, which establishes the cost share arrangement for the lot, or for the water line extension. And that is based on our Employee of the Year's opinion of probable costs. And so what would happen is that they would pay us a fee up front, and then we would put the project out to bid, and then once we learn the actual costs, they would only pay what it actually costs.
Right.
So hopefully this ends up being a conservative estimate, and they don't pay this amount of money. And then the last item would be a budget amendment the board needs to approve to allow this to take place. And so those are the 3 items we're asking for you to approve. Again, we didn't want to make this property owner wait a month for the next meeting, so we're asking you to approve this now. And this agreement is similar to what the board approved last year with the Gallery Row property owner. Some of the terms are slightly different, but it does reference that 44-108 section of the ordinance. So with that said, I'm happy to answer any questions, and we've laid out the different motions the board would need to approve.
And that budget amendment is 48,309.
Yes. And then it's split up between the property owner share and the town share.
All right. Any questions, board, before we start on these motions? All right, then a motion to amend the ordinance would be in order.
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. The second would be approval of the agreement that was presented to us with the property owner, between the town and the property owner.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. And the last would be to approve the budget amendment in the amount of $48,309 as presented.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Carolyn, I voted aye every time. If I didn't say it, I meant to say it. All right, very good. All right. Andy, that's it for you?
Yes, sir.
All right. Board of Commissioners agenda. Commissioner Lambert? Commissioner Sears?
No.
Commissioner Sanders?
Nothing today, thank you.
All right, very good. All right. That brings us to the mayor's agenda. And so, as everyone is aware, Commissioner Brinkley had to resigned his position. He is no longer a resident of the town. We regret that. We miss him. But it is appropriate that the board fill this position by appointment. And this appointee would serve through the November 2025 election. And then a successor would be elected in November of 2025 and would then serve the remainder of Commissioner Brinkley's term, which ends with November 2027. So there will both be this appointment, and then there will be an election to fill out the balance of Commissioner Brinkley's term. And so the board has developed with, after talking to some other towns and reaching out to other towns who have made, local towns, who have made appointments, similar kinds of appointments to their board, consulting the board and the staff, a questionnaire and an application has been developed. We have that up on the screen, and it asks the basic information, biographical information, contact information, and asks whether the applicant may be interested in the future in running for and serving, standing for election for that position. Why do you wish to serve? How have you interacted with the town? These could be board participation. This could be task forces, committees, volunteer activities. We want to know how you've been engaged with the town. Describe issues that are important to you, and how would you be a good fit with the Board of Commissioners, and any other additional information. So this application will, with the board's approval, hopefully in a bit, go live on the town website today. There will be instructions for completing and returning this application. This will be due, and this will be evident where it is posted on the website. This would be due back to the board on December 20th at noon. And the reason for that being noon instead of the end of the day is that is the last Friday before Christmas. People may be traveling and looking at other plans, and that it gives us time for staff to receive them and turn around and pass them on to the board. The board will then take these under consideration and at an appropriate time discuss those and make a make a recommendation for an appointment to the board. We would like to do this in an orderly way, but without a real commitment to date. I mean, we're not gonna, I don't wanna, we don't wanna lock the board down to say, well, the January meeting, we're gonna do this. We are going to do this as soon as the board can properly consider these and make the appointment. But we would hope to do that very shortly after the first of the year, without committing to a date, very shortly after the first of the year. We look forward to, we know that interest has been expressed. We would urge everybody in the town to take a look at this. If you have considered, if you have been engaged in service, if you've considered service to the town, and believe you would be a good board member, I would urge you to take a look at this application. And if you're so moved, to submit it to the town for consideration. Board, do you have anything to add to that?
No, you covered everything.
Okay. All right, very good. Well, then staff will make it so, and that will, after, let's see, do we need a vote on this, John?
Yes, sir. I think you should.
Okay. All right, then,
Motion to put the application to the public.
okay.
Did that work, John?
Yes, sir.
All right, very good. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, very good. Thank you very much. We have already conducted the other closed session business that's on the agenda at this point. Is there any other business to come before the board? Nope. There is no need for a mid-month meeting that I am aware of. And so a motion to adjourn would be in order.
Second.
We'll take that. We'll say that that's a motion and a second. Motion by me and a second by Commissioner Sears. How about that? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. Thank you. The board is adjourned.